I failed in academia for a number of reasons. But what I've done is over the last few years, I've been out of academia now for about 3 or 4 years, probably longer. And I've kind of looked at the process that I went through. And hindsight is 2020. And I don't feel what I felt back then. But what I've tried to do is split down how it started and how it ended and how I became an academic failure in the university system. I hope that this isn't a whingy video. What I hope from this video is that you can identify what part of the process you are in if you are feeling this way. And, I take full responsibility for my own choices, where I ended up in the academic system. And, for so long I tried to control the system. The system is uncontrollable. The academic system, in the way it's set up, you have to play the game. And so I've got a 3-step process that I think I went through, like subconsciously, without really knowing that I was going through this process. But on reflection, it started with exactly that. The first thing was not realizing that there was a game to be played. I don't know whether I had a unreasonable expectation about what academia and science and scientific research was. But, during my PhD, I just sort of did the work. And I think the majority of success comes down to doing the work. And, you can get a PhD because you turn up every day, you do a thing, and that culminates, through compound interest to a thesis or a PhD that you're proud of. Now, when you sort of launch the other side of that, there is no end goal. The end goal always moves forward. You produce a peer-reviewed paper based on some science or some research you've done, and then it's okay, well, where's the next one? There is a forever moving horizon that you're trying to trudge towards. But the thing is there's a load of things in the way, and it's because of this academic game. Now, arguably, this is my opinion, but academia isn't about doing great science. It's about gaming the metrics. And I think my slippery slope to academic failure was realizing that too late, or not being willing to do and play the game in the way the academic system needs the game to be played. So what I mean by that is, you can do the best science in the world, but if you're not publishing in the right papers, you're not publishing papers in the right journals quickly enough, you are considered, not a good scientist. So really the game is, don't worry about the quality of the science or the research necessarily, but how can you play that game so you get the maximum outcome for the lowest amount of effort? Now, it doesn't mean to say there isn't some great science that is published along the way, but I think what we've seen is it go from quality science that is published, every 3 years to publish or perish, visible or vanish is another one. How are you promoting this research? And that is also part of the academic game. It's not how can you promote this research, it's rather how can you make the university look good. The university that you are working for is in competition with every single other university for students, for researchers, for money. And if you can sort of help the university build up its reputation to the point where people are like, that is a great university, then the university will reward you. So not only have you got this publish or perish kind of aspect to the university system, but also then you've got the visible or vanish. How are you staying current? How are you staying relevant to the general population? How are you promoting your research? And, I think I realized that too late. Once you're in your early career research, which is that late PhD, early career, you're mid, I think it's under 5 years post PhD. If you don't catch on quickly, you're quickly left behind. And so, my supervisor straight out of my PhD was like, okay, 5 papers a year. What? What sort of papers can I publish per year? The answer is not very good ones, but that wasn't in his mind. That wasn't the metric that was to be played. The metric is as many as possible. And remember that your supervisor absorbs all of the papers that you produce, which means that he has to publish, maybe 10 to 20 papers a year from his research group. And he is on that same, or they are on that same kind of treadmill. And it's tough. And you have to realize that the game to be played, you do have to focus on different things to what you think. You have to focus on, how can I get this bit of research published quickly and then move on? And I know some people who are very good at that. You can kind of spin a great story from research if you're a good communicator. And I think that's what kind of kept me around for a while, or longer than necessary, is because I was a great communicator. I was able to go into a group meeting and fill everyone with confidence with what I was doing, and then I'd go out and do the same, come back, report. I was always gathering results, always trying to spin the results in a certain way, and it worked for a reasonable amount of time. But that isn't the game. The game is to publish as much as humanly possible, and then as you get further up that ladder, the next game is bring in as much money as possible to the university. I brought in about $60,000 to my first position after my PhD, and that was just sort of like a South Australian grant that I got called a Catalyst grant, and that was kind of my first taste of, this is what people want. I remember walking into my supervisor's office, and he was beaming. He was just so proud, and I was like, okay, this is what we do. We get money. Money makes people happy. Papers make people happy. Let's try that. But yeah. Then the question is, do you want to play that game? And I'm not quite sure where I fell. I don't know whether I didn't realize the game was to be played and therefore I fell behind, or I recognized the game to be played and I realized that it is a shitty game. It's not a game that I feel comfortable playing. And I don't know whether it's because I was already behind that I didn't want to play it, and maybe I'll never know, but I just felt so lost once I realized that was the game. The academic game was being played, and I didn't know I was a player until it was too late. And so that led on to the next thing. The next thing is the sunk cost fallacy. So the second part of this process of failure, I think, comes down when you're struggling internally with the external and the internal. They're in conflict with each other, because the external is giving you all the signs that it's time, it's over. And I think I've seen loads of PhD students, postdocs, where it's like, the external world is telling you that it's over. Your journey in academia is over, and you're just prolonging your misery if you stay here. And the problem is I was in exactly this process and this position, because it's hard to leave something that you spent so much time getting to. This idea that you've put in a lot of effort, you've done your undergrad in science, you've done your master's in science, you've done your PhD in science, now you're doing science, and you get there and you're like, this is rubbish. And look, that's my opinion. Like I said, I wasn't willing to play that academic game. I think there are still some great scientists doing great science and great research, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And so because I'd spent so much time building my identity around this clever scientist PhD person, I couldn't fathom what I would do outside. I genuinely couldn't. And so that led me to what was known as the postdoc treadmill, moving from the next postdoc, hoping, I guess, that something would get better along the way, or all of a sudden I'd land in that PhD research group that like accelerated my career or did something. Like, that was the thing. So the sunk cost fallacy kept me in academia when really I should have started building the skills to leave. Now, luckily for me, I like science communication, and that was part of the skill set that I was growing. Communicating research, writing about research, going on to radio shows, all of that stuff I really enjoyed, but there's no money in it. That's the thing I know now. I didn't know that at the time. I was like, I'm going to be a science communicator. It's going to be brilliant. Looking back on it, it was like I didn't understand what an academic was, or the game had changed so much that I no longer actually wanted to be that academic that the system had created over that time. And so, yeah, I was just there. And so I was on the postdoc treadmill and I just couldn't leave. And in fact, I actually left. I left academia to go to industry because I was like, surely this is better. I'll leave. I'm off. All right, thanks, guys. And I left and I did a year in industry as an explosives chemist at Dyno Nobel, which was a fantastic job. But I still felt like a cog in a machine rather than maybe that feeling. When you're doing a PhD, you feel kind of special. At least I did. I felt very special. And then all of a sudden I got out the other end and I'm like, oh, I'm a cog in a machine. I'm not special. It's like the millennials have been, I guess, maybe let down by the fact that we were told in school that we were so special and so clever and we can do anything we want. And then you get out of the other end and the world's changed so much that you no matter how educated you become, you still have to do a job. You still have to sell your time for money. And that was what was annoying to me. Is like, hang on, aren't I special? Aren't I like the world's special little boy who could do anything he wanted? But now I'm in a big dirty hole with explosives. And I liked the job, but it didn't make me feel special enough. And so I was like, you know what? Academia actually made me feel a little bit more special, so I'll go back. So after spending some time in industry and realizing that I didn't want to be part of a big, horrible corporate money-making machine, which was ultimately destroying the environment by blowing it up and taking the resources from the ground, I was like, okay, I'm back in academia. And that further sort of deepened my sunk cost fallacy thing, because I was like, I've made a decision to come back. Like, now if I leave, I'm going to look like an absolute idiot. Now in hindsight, that didn't matter. It shouldn't matter. But at the time, it was like, okay, I'm coming back to do a postdoc. I should carry on doing this because out there in the real world, the jobs are actually a little bit boring. I didn't actually find anything I wanted within science. So that's where I was. And so that's the sunk cost fallacy that I think keeps a lot of people in academia for far too long. In fact, I was ready to leave, like the money was drying up. Typical sort of academic story. The money was drying up. I had no more contracts on the horizon because normally they can extend it by little bit, especially if you're an okay scientist. I wasn't brilliant, but I was good enough. And that was also another problem. I was good enough to stay around, but not good enough to become an academic in my own right. And so, yes, I just kind of stayed on this path, on this treadmill. And that's a terrible place to find yourself in because you're just in no man's limbo land. And like I was saying, there we are, back on my train of thought. I'd actually had nothing on the horizon, and then all of a sudden I went to an award show. I got the South Australian Unsung Science Communicator of the Year. Look, it's dusty. Ooh, this was in 2015. And the great thing about this award is that it can fit through a triangular hole, a square hole, and a round hole. How good's that? But yes, 2015, I was the unsung hero of South Australian science communication. So I was like, this is my ticket. Maybe this is my ticket. So at that same award show where I got this dusty, it wasn't dusty at the time, award, I met someone who I'd met at a conference previously, and I knew him throughout my PhD. And he said, "What are you up to?" And instead of being brave and saying, "I'm really looking forward to trying something else," I lied to him and to myself. And I said, "I'm looking for another role and my job is about to run out." And he said, "Send me your CV. I've got something for you." And the thing is, I should have said what I really wanted, which was, I'm going to try something else and I don't know what it is. But the sunk cost fallacy kept me going, well, I'm here in this deep. Someone's offered me a contract. Let's do it. And so that ended up with me in a 2-year position, but I only actually ended up doing 13 months of that. And this leads me on to the third and final part of how you become an academic failure, which is you become very scared, and then that manifests as anger. Being scared and angry is a terrible combination in academia because you will end up getting what you deserve, and that is fired or pushed out of academia in another way. And I see so many young academics going down this path that I wish that I had left before it got to that point. But the problem is we feel scared and trapped. Scared and trapped because we're now in a system that we've convinced ourselves that we want to be in, but we probably really don't, but we have no idea about what else we would want to do. I mean, I was like, I'll do science communication. I got my award in South Australia. I'll do that. But instead of being brave and taking the leap, I did another job, which then left me with the same problems I had before, which was a short-term contract in a university that was even more corporate and even more cutthroat. And there'd just been a change of leadership. And in universities, the leadership will dictate the culture underneath. And that was that you are going to bring in money or we don't care about you. That was the new university system that I was in. And the academics that were above me, they were selected because they believed in that as well, I think. And so they become a selection of the system, and what you end up with is this whole horrible structure where people only care about money. And that's exactly what this university became for me at the time. So I was scared because I'd now just signed up for something I didn't want to do. I was trapped. Like, who is going to employ me now? And then how does that manifest? Well, that manifests as anger. I was angry. Why didn't I get what I deserved? I'd worked so bloody hard getting to where I was. Why do I have to continue working as hard? Like, surely the hard stuff I've done. Now it's about, doing science and learning things and publishing and having fun. But no, the university system that I was trying to control and change was far too big. And so I just ended up being angry at it. And, it started, if you can go check out my TEDx talk at Flinders University, that was kind of the start of my realization process. And I ended up, at a university. And it's tough because as part of this process, you're kind of led to believe that you can be successful eventually, like the next paper, the next year, apply for this grant, which has got a 10% success rate. But it just keeps you hanging around far longer than you should. And so I was angry. I was angry not necessarily at my supervisor or the current university that I was in, but at the system in general. And so what did I do? I started acting up like a teenager, like a toddler even. And so I just tried to find ways to cause a scene, I guess. And I got exactly what I deserved, which was not fired, but encouraged to leave when another opportunity came up. And so not knowing where I was going to end up meant that I was angry in a position that I didn't have the guts or the courage to leave because I was scared. And so maybe by acting up, I decided that it's better to be fired because then the decision isn't mine. The decision is someone else's, who's like, that guy needs to be fired. And then I could be like, I was fired, instead of, yeah, I worked really hard to get to this point, and then I realized that I didn't want to do it. But I just left. Like, that was never an option. So by being an asshole to people higher up than me, I was able to, I guess, give them the opportunity to encourage me to leave. Now, I did a lot of horrible stuff, and some of it I still think is slightly funny, and other things are a little bit of the, have you heard of the like main character syndrome, where you kind of think you're the primary character in life? There was kind of a little bit of that coming out, where I was like, I need to make a stand. And ultimately it ended up with exactly what I deserved, where an opportunity came up to do an internship, an unpaid internship at Cosmos magazine, and I wanted 2 weeks off, and my supervisor said, no, you'll have to quit. And if it wasn't for that, I would have never quit. So thank you to my supervisor at that time, because I've really enjoyed the journey since then. And I became a burden, therefore I was encouraged to leave, and the outcome is really positive. Now, the thing is, when you want to leave academia, all of these societal expectations come into your mind, which is like, you're a failure. If you leave what you've trained to do, you've failed in some way. And failure is only permanent if you don't try something else afterwards. Like, I've grown a number of businesses now. I'm still trying to find my feet with those things, but I've enjoyed the process far more than I ever did in academia. And I enjoy working on challenging things, which is just like science. And I've kind of forged my own path, and it's been scary. I've needed support. I've doubted myself. I've been sad. I've cried. Because things haven't gone well with some of the businesses, and I feel like it's a reflection on me and my integrity and all that sort of stuff. But it's weird. I've enjoyed this part of my career far more than anything else, and so I wish that I had stopped at the second part that I talked about in this video, which is the sunk cost fallacy. You don't owe anyone anything. Leave. There's a whole world where you can make money in different ways doing what you like. And, people's circumstances are different, but if working out what you can control and controlling that, don't try to control stuff you can't, because you'll end up scared and angry. And so you can be successful in academia if you realize early on that you need to play a certain game, and you start focusing your efforts on that game. And then, with compound interest and repeated work, and if you enjoy the process, which is another really important part, then you'll get there. Maybe I never ever really wanted to be an academic. I just really liked people thinking I was clever, and that's where I ended up. This is my path. This is the journey. And like I said, failure is not permanent unless you let it be. So reflect. Think about what you want to do. Where are you going? Do you actually enjoy what you're doing? And don't get to the point where you're scared and angry like I was, because it will do you no good. It will cause a scene eventually, guaranteed. And it's so easy to do. And being angry at a big old system is as futile as the war on drugs. Because, the system is the system, and you can't control it. You have to accept that you have to work within it, or get out and leave. And that's what I wish I had done much earlier, but maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe I needed to be a little bit older, a little bit mature before I was ready to launch into something else like I'm doing now. So there we are. That's how I became an academic failure. So there we are. There is the 3-step process that I think a lot of people go through. And ultimately, no matter what journey you take, it leads you to being scared and angry about your situation. Let me know in the comments if you relate to any of that. And I hope that it's been useful and helpful, because only with hindsight do I really understand the journey I took. And I tried my best to be as introspective as possible for your benefit. So thanks. I'll see you in the next video. Remember to give this video a thumbs up and a share if it's been useful. You know, I hope it has. That is my main thing, and it hasn't been too whingy.